we have a very, very special guest in the studio. She goes by the name of Yvonne Parks, and she is a money advice supervisor from the Citizens Advice Bureau in South Gloucestershire. A very good morning, Yvonne.
Good morning, Marcus. Thanks for having me back again.
Hey, it's like, you're part of the crew now. So, Yvonne, I've just recently moved house, and the council tax has spiraled. It's escalated. It's increased because I've moved into like a bigger house or a different band.
So with council tax, you're right. They are in bands, and that depends on what kind of house you've got and what area it's in. So council tax, it's tax paid to the council to cover things like our rubbish, schools, and social care. So it's an important tax to pay. But what we're finding at Citizens Advice is that many people just simply don't have the money to pay it. And that's partly to do with the cost of living crisis and energy bills. But not just that. It could be that paying their council tax is difficult for they're in a financial crisis, they might have lost their job, they might be unwell. So there are many, many reasons why somebody might find it really difficult to pay council tax. And in your situation, you've moved house, it's a bigger house, but your salary is the same. So you haven't had an increase in income, but you've got more going out than you did before. So that's also quite a common scenario that we see at the Bureau. So
I'm a single person living by myself. Is there anything I can do to reduce my council tax bill?
Absolutely. So if you're a single person, or if you're the only adult in the house, then you can apply to get a 25% discount.
Handy.
So you apply to your local council, in your case it would be Bristol, and you get a 25% discount automatically off your bill. But there are also other discounts that you can get. So the most common one is if it's a house of students, if you're all full-time students, then you don't pay your council tax. If you've got a severe mental impairment, you can apply not to pay your council tax. It's something you've got to apply for. It's not automatic. And there is a severe mental impairment form. And that covers things like dementia, Parkinson's, things like that.
So just when you mentioned if it's like a house of students, say it's a house, a mixture of students and then one or two people are actually working, because that happens sometimes.
It does happen. So
what happens there?
There will be some discount, but mostly the council tax will have to be paid.
Okay, so the people that are working will have to pay it if they happen to be living with students.
That's right.
Okay. And then the other one was for, you said mental health?
Severe mental impairment, so that could cover mental health. Most commonly it covers things like dementia or Parkinson's.
I've never heard of this. This is the first time I've heard of this. So useful.
There's also something else which most people haven't heard of. It's discretionary. It's Section 13A, so we call it Section 13A, but it's of the Local Government Finance Act. And that is where somebody is in a situation where it's simply impossible for them to pay their council tax. So something pretty catastrophic must have happened.
And it does from time to time in our lives.
And it does, yeah. Nobody's exempt from that. So it's done by letter. It's called a Section 13A, but if somebody comes to us and they're in that situation, we would do a letter under this section of the Local Government Finance Act, send it to the council, and potentially it could mean that they don't have to pay their council tax. So it's something that's rare, but I think it's rare because most people haven't heard of it.
Yeah, Section 13A.
Yeah, of the Local Government Finance Act. And if anyone is in that situation where something really catastrophic has happened and it's absolutely impossible, go to your local advice centre.
What do you do if you're not able to qualify for any of these discounts and whatnot, and the council are sending letters, they're telling you have to pay, but you just can't, and then there's the threat of bailiffs, isn't there?
Yeah, so council tax is always a priority bill, and the reason it's a priority bill is because if you don't pay it, ultimately you could go to prison for 3 months.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes we see people, if you owe over £5,000 in council tax, and that does happen, the council can issue a statutory demand, and if you own a house, then you could potentially lose your house as well. So that's why it's a priority bill, because the sanctions of not paying can be so extreme.
Wow.
So what I would suggest somebody does in the first instance is work out how much you've got coming in and how much you're paying out. Can you make any cuts to what you're paying out? What if you can't? What if you're literally on the breadline and there's nothing else that you can stop paying out? If the arrears are such that it goes to bailiffs, then there are certain things that you can do. So the first thing I would suggest you do is contact the council, because once the council knows you can't pay rather than you won't pay, that's a completely different scenario, and they will look at helping you pay. So if you miss 2 months, then the whole year becomes payable at once. So that's when you get a reminder letter, you have to pay in 7 days. And if you can't do that, at that stage, you get a summons and it can go to the magistrates' court, where the council will get a liability order. They get a liability order so they can enforce what you owe. They can't really enforce it without a liability order. So on the one hand, they could then just send it to bailiffs, but on the other hand, they do have longer to accept repayments. So without a liability order, you have to pay it within the tax year. Once they've got the liability order, they've got up to 3 years.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's quite a bit of time.
Yeah, so that's to pay off the arrears.
Yeah.
As well as your ongoing.
Yeah.
But let's say it goes to bailiffs. Still contact the council. They will probably say once it's gone to bailiffs that you have to negotiate with the bailiffs. And the thing with that is that the bailiffs add fees. So, for example, if you owe £95 in council tax arrears, once they've added on the costs of the summons and the liability order, which is around about £120. First bailiff letter, they charge £75. First bailiff visit is £235. So
wow.
Suddenly you've gone from a debt of £95 to a debt of £525.
Wow. I mean, that's just spiralling costs, isn't it?
It's spiralling costs for somebody who's already having financial difficulties, and that's why we say it's always better to deal with it before it gets to that stage. So if you're having difficulties, contact the council, go to an advice centre, find out what your options are.
Yvonne, I thought that the councils locally stopped using bailiffs. So was that only temporary?
So that was a temporary situation during COVID. Bristol City Council are not using bailiffs as much as they were. South Gloucestershire Council have gone back to using bailiffs.
I mean, I'm not sure if you're allowed to give an opinion, but I mean, are bailiffs useful in this situation? They're
useful to the council because people panic. And they've got a bailiff on their doorstep saying, right, we're going to take your car away.
Yeah.
We're going to come in, even though they can't come in unless they're invited in the first time. Most people don't know that, so they let them in, and then there's a risk of their goods being taken away to be sold at auction. So from the council's point of view, it does work. They do get more money that way by using bailiffs. But from a personal point of view, people have the stress, they're frightened, they don't know where to turn, and they don't know what their rights are, and that's where we come in. Or if you're confident on the computer, go online, go to National Debt Line, go to Debt Camel. That's a private site that a lot of people don't know, but it's run by a specialist money advisor, and it's really helpful for people.
I mean, if a bailiff is knocking on your door, how best do you deal with them? What are your rights?
You don't have to let them in the first time they come round. So they have to gain what we call peaceable entry. So that means they can't force their way in. However, if you do let them in the first time, then they can come back a second time and they don't have to gain peaceable entry that that time, so they can change the lock or they can force their way in. But the first time, they're not allowed to do that. So keep your windows shut, keep your door shut, don't let them in. However, if you've got a car that's parked on a non-private road, they can clamp it. If the car belongs to you, then they can clamp it. And they've taken possession of that car. Even if they don't drive it away, they've taken possession of it, and they can come back another time. But what they tend to do is they get a control of goods agreement. Used to be called a levy. It's when they write down various goods to pay the council tax, and then they can use that to negotiate a repayment.
Wow. Okay. Yvonne, thank you so much for coming in. It's always so interesting and insightful, and I'm sure helpful for a lot of people. So for council tax, as well as all other sorts of debts and money advice, etc., where can people go? I mean, you mentioned a few there, like Debt Camel, etc. What other resources can people use to find out more? Go
to the council, first of all, explain your situation, make sure that you're getting all the benefits you're entitled to, so council tax reduction, pension credit, discretionary housing payment to help with your rent. That might free up some money to pay your council tax. Go to advice centres. There's plenty in Bristol. We're in South Gloucestershire. National Debt Line, Debt Camel, Step Change.
All right, thank you.
And if people are contacting the council to try and negotiate this, is it better to do it in writing or in person to try and do this?
I would say anyway is the best way, because the council just need to know what your situation is, and if you're struggling, they need to know that.
All right. Yvonne Parks from Citizens Advice Bureau in South Gloucestershire. Thank you so much, as ever.
Thank you for having me.
Until next month.
Bye.